observations, suggestions? Yes.
We can sit down.
I had a comment on
Go for it.
one of Sarah's slides. Sarah, you see the slide that had the number of years people have been farming and their interest in organic, and there was a pretty high interest in long-term farmers. At least in the area that I work, which is central New York, I think a lot of the farms that transitioned to organic dairy were mature farms. And it was a way for people nearing retirement and getting tired to maintain a level of income without having to expand. So I think for that group of people, it's worked well for them, and it fits with their kind of overall goal of retiring without having to make new investments in technology or any other, things on the farm. They can just kind of ride it out and shut down the operation.
Well, that's an interesting thing. In working in just the last several years, the one thing I've been most struck by is people who are not farming and their assumptions about farmers' risk taking, demeanor, their thoughts about it. And the bottom line is, and I think that my thinking that farmers are looking for that contract for organic dairy where it's the exact same price amongst the conventional dairy community is wrong. Dairy farmers love it when the money is good, and a lot of them have figured out ways for surviving downturns. Now, is that going to change now that dairy has gone through 2008, 2009 was rotten, and according to the big national guys who are looking at just dairy, this is Mark Stevenson and the other, what's the Cornell guy's name?
Andy Novakovic.
Andy Novakovic. They have said that even this last year, 2011, has not gotten farmers back, dairy farmers back on track as far as getting where they were in 2008 as far as loss of equity in their farms. So many
you can't
people.
interpret that as they love risk. I mean,
No, oh, I'm not.
kind of extreme.
No, I'm not, Janice. I'm talking about looking a farmer in the eye and having her tell me that they just love the money when it comes in. And so that's how they don't need, so everybody's different about it. All I'm saying is my assumption that everybody wants an assured income has been wrong.
I'm not sure there is an assured income comments from.
We have, of the farmers in Vermont we've talked to, a lot of them love that contract price because it eliminated the volatility, that it's the up and down, and the uncertainty that comes with the conventional milk price going from a high in 2007 and to hitting a low in 2009 where they got the same thing they got 30 years ago. And we had a situation with your conventional dairies in the spring of 2009. Most of their cash flow was coming in at that time, didn't even cover the feed bill. So when you have those ups and downs, a lot of people that have liked going into organic did want to get rid of that cycle, but it also allowed them, like the same thing you said, was a lot of farmers saw it as a way of not getting on the treadmill, trying to get bigger to add another 20 cows and add on to the barn, or add in another 50 cows or something like that. And a lot of that was their own physical barriers too. We have a lot of smaller farms in narrow valleys that finding additional ground to raise forage for another 50 cows is not easy because they're going to have to go a good ways to find that land. And so all these combinations together made organic a very practical manner of all the factors that they put together. And of course, everybody wants more income at the end of the year and have the profitability of being able to meet those payments that they owe at the end of the month.
Well, I did want to modify what you said. The farmers love the contract price when it covers their costs, but when it doesn't cover their costs, they are not so sure that the contract price is such a good thing.
I think if you gave somebody, goes, what would you rather have? Would you have 5 years where you average a 5% or a 3% return on your assets with a fairly constant price? Or would you want to have 5 years where you may have, where more likely you will average the same percentage, but you're going to have some years you're going to be making 10% or some years you're going to be losing 10%? I think they'd much rather have it steady. And so, but I mean, that's under certainty, and you know, the problem of the downturns, you know, that's gut wrenching.
What's the term of an average contract, number of years?
I think most of them are 6 months to a year.
Because I know Organic Valley, you know, it's been not as much volatility, I completely agree, but the organic price isn't guaranteed to stay stable.
Yeah, it's not so guaranteed, but you know that the milk that I'm producing this month is going to bring me in this price. It's not dependent upon what the Class 3 price in Chicago is going to be on the last Friday of the month, based on the previous month's projected Class 1 price, and with also being influenced by a shift in Class 3 and Class 4, depending on what exports are on milk powder, and how much might be going into Class 2, and they trying to explain milk price. We don't have
Rocket
3
science
days.
got nothing on dairy pricing. But yeah, I mean, the feed cost basis has been a real game changer for a lot of people, because you know you've got people on pasture, very pasture dependent, and they're more insulated from it. And those who are in the feed market, the organic feed, have taken some hits. But anyway, any other questions? Yes.
I live in Vermont. I'm not so familiar with New York State. I go to Cornell once a year, and I was really impressed with the poor state of the dairy around. I mean, in Ithaca, you have the strong farmers market and the university and the money there, and the truck farmers and the vegetable farmers. But as you go outside, you see the conventional dairy farms that are just, they're not doing very well at all. So in your studies, do you relate location and proximity to urban centers or universities and the type of farm, and then how they're doing, you know, to that? Have you ever related location to your studies?
Well, I'm looking at all the way up and down the food value chain. So if there's a successful processor, out in Western New York, we have Upstate Niagara. They have their own brands. They do some organic milk. There's that component of prices paid to farmers and farmer economic viability. There's the ultimate market. You know, what are our consumers going to drink more organic milk or eat more organic dairy products? Those are all factors that tie into farm profitability from my perspective. Regions, you know about soil types, and there can be a lot of variability in the profitability of farms. I used to live in the Northeast Kingdom, and you know, there's some tough land and not the best soils and a lot of slope. But in general, I'd be curious, maybe we could talk afterwards, how you base your operations. But I've seen some tough dairy operations in Vermont too.
And I would say that the two things. One, it used to be that milk, in particular, milk and cheese, was a simple formula of an association between the location of the consumer and the location of the dairy farm. I mean, it was sort of ag geographic economics, where things actually were located. And that's simply not the case anymore. I would believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, that most studies, especially on milk price, are not talking, you had repairs in your study, but for the most part, when consumers and overall studies are done of the price of milk, it is not, it doesn't look at whether the farmer had to abandon the house that their great-grandfather built in 1870-something and they're living in a trailer that's 10 years old and ought to be junked. It doesn't look at that kind of thing. So the overall decline, or let's say the overall amount that a dairy farmer has been making, $35,000, where does that leave you as far as, let's say, doing a $10,000 upgrade of your house or your barn? I don't think it leaves you any flexibility.
I mean, this is where, like you asked the question, what return on assets are. You have to have a return on assets of any farming operation if you're going to be reinvesting in the farm property and in the capital of the farm, equipment, buildings, and that's where it has to be a business. And that's where we get into the situation today. It takes a large cash flow, one, to meet family living expenses, plus to meet all your production expenses, no matter whether you're in vegetables or whether you're in dairy or whether you're in some other sector. It has to be looked at because you want to be not just enough money this year, you have to be replacing things as you go along. And it's like, thinking of, wow, he goes, my 10-year-old car, he goes, it's great because it gets me great gas mileage. Well, you hit the pothole that it causes the damage and it's rusted and it falls apart. He goes, now I have to go buy another car. And that money, unfortunately, has to come from somewhere. And so you're either making payments or you pull from earnings that you've made in the past to replace that. And it's a really challenge of any business that takes a look at things on a long-term basis.
Before we break up, and I know we're between lunch here, there's one consumer study we did that's summarized here where we're trying to find out where consumers buy organic and how often they buy organic. So we're moving into the marketing demand side. If you want copies, it's up here.
One more before we break for lunch, yes?
Do you think the raw milk laws in Vermont will help dairy farmers at all? No.
Okay, there you have it. So, thank you very much.
What did you say?
Yeah, I said no.
You said
Somebody just